This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hi, this is Scott Hartnell.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey.
Hello, Lloydminster. This is Keith Morrison, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Now, let's get on to your T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Originally from Scarborough, Ontario, he's been popularized by his private Toronto Maple Leafs collection of memorabilia in his basement. He used this collection to host fundraising events for years, raising over $2 million for various charities. The collection was the backdrop for events that saw legends like Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, Chris Hatfield, Brendan Shanahan, Johnny Bauer,
On the Sean Newman Podcast today, I'm joined by Mike Wilson, he's probably, his alter ego, the ultimate Leafs fan. So first off, thanks for hopping on.
He's went to every
great,
Leafs
thanks
game
for having me. I should clarify right off the
season.
bat, Sean, that I did not give myself
Inside the Room, an ultimate road trip. I'm talking about Mike Wilson. So buckle up. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Ultimate Leafs fans out there.
What was, when ESPN did the story and they called you that, were you like, oh, all right, yeah, sure, I guess?
Yeah, kind of like that, because they were doing this thing on All Crazy Fans, and this was about 10 years ago, and they did a story in one of the magazines, and then they sent a guy from Buffalo and all this, and they wanted me to, a lot of the fans they were doing had their faces painted, wearing crazy get-ups, and I don't do that. Like, it's just not in me to do that. I take it, not that they don't take it serious, but I take it very serious, and I don't clown myself up to go to games, even though I love when I go to a rink and there's 12,000 Maple Leaf fans dressed like that and cheering. So it's perfect. But, so they were trying to, so if you see the picture of me with my hands like this, pointing at I said, that's the craziest thing I'll do. I was pointing at the sign above my head, and they used that as that. So then they labeled me that right after.
Well, I gotta know. I mean, for most guys, becoming a fan of a team starts very young. You're in your 60s, so you would have grown up in the heyday of hockey when there was nothing else on. Kids today, I can't even fathom what you guys probably grew up through. I read, you said in life there was hockey, watching the Leafs, and school. That was it. So let's go back to the beginning, Mike, and let's talk about this ultimate Leafs fan and the origin story, so to speak, of how this all began.
Well, I'm 66, and when I grew up in the late 50s and early 60s, you're absolutely right, Sean. There was nothing to do. There was 4 channels on TV, and I'm not going to tell you I walked through 10 feet of snow on my bare feet and all that kind of stuff, but winters were cold. I grew up in Toronto, and the snow was high, and there'd be frozen rinks at the schoolyards or around the neighborhoods from late November till March. And if you weren't playing on the streets, and we would even skate on the streets at time, you started playing hockey outside. And first and foremost, I fell in love with the game of hockey. That was it. And it became everything. It became an obsession to play it. I would play it 12 months of the year, but we weren't allowed to play in the summer because nobody did. We played baseball and started playing it. And then the natural progression was to watch the pros on TV. So Hockey Night in Canada, Saturday night, as a family, we'd sit around and watch it. And Maple Leafs were the team of choice. And they became my obsession after that, because like any little kid, you start collecting hockey cards, and there'd be the Jello coins and the marbles and clipping articles out of the newspapers. The papers would come out in the afternoon in those days, not in the morning like today. And you'd get the newspaper and clip pictures out, and sometimes in Saturdays it'd be a color picture, and I'd always look for that. And as that progressed, a relative of ours was very good friends with Carl Brewer, who played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he showed up one day with an autographed team stick, game used, from Carl Brewer as my gift. And this was my pride and joy. So that was the first real collectible that I got. And I was about 6 or 7. And that just became my possession. And then my uncle got me a Lippy's Beans promotional poster of Frank Mahovlich in color. And I never had a color poster before. And I had 2 of them. And he actually got me 2, and he said, my dad said, so now Frank Mahovich's dad, I guess I should back up, was the skate sharpener at a suburban rink in Leaside, Ontario, which is just a part of Toronto. And my dad played hockey there, worked at IBM for 40 years, and he played hockey there every Sunday morning. So I'd hang around Frank Mahovich's dad's skate booth as the skate sharpener every Sunday morning, looking at him and looking at the couple pictures he had in there. And my dad actually said to him, or said to me, maybe we should give Mr. Mahavich one of the posters. And of course I said no. But the idea was to give him one of these posters. So I remember we went to Leaside Arena, reaching up, and he was a big man, and he had his work overalls on, and he knew who I was from hanging around the rink. And I handed him that poster. He patted me in the head. He turned around and he hung that in his booth, and it stayed there until the day he retired. And the go around of this is what any collector will get this. When Frank Mahavich eventually came and saw my room, and I have that post, I have one of those posters, and I had the display article and advertisement from Libby's. And I told Frank that story. He had tears in his eyes as he was recounting his father and thinking of memories of his father. And he actually said to me, he says, Mike, I got $500 for doing that ad. Now, Punching Mark and the Toronto Maple Leafs got a lot more, but I don't know how much those buggers got. And that just started from there.
And it almost, became addicting, I bet.
Well, it does, because like every kid in the neighborhood was doing the same thing. They were collecting cards. Some guys were collecting comic. I remember a guy was collecting Thor comic books, and he wouldn't let anybody even touch them. And they never even heard of that before. And this guy was just, everything was so delicate. You couldn't even, you could just look at the pile, not even touch them. And then we started doing that with our hockey cards, and you're flipping them against the walls and playing knockdowns and flips and all that for the cards. And I'd open a pack and look at, Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull, they weren't a Maple Leaf and get rid of them. And I remember I came home when I was a kid, I was riding a bike and my pants in my pocket. They'd be digging into my leg and I'd have cuts. My mom would go, "What did you do, Michael?" And my leg would all be bruised from the cards. That's how sharp they were in those days. Like to have those all back today, but that's what we all did that. And the Coke bottles with the caps came out and collected those, and I just took a little bit further than other guys. That's all.
Well, I was going to say, I remember being a kid and collecting hockey cards, and got 3 older brothers, so we used to trade them all the time, and there were certain collectibles you had for sure. But you took it to like the next level. And most people, I would say they grow out of the collector stage and they just become the fan, and they go to a few games and they cheer for them and they talk about them religiously, and and that's what they do. What was it about collecting that drew you in and made you go after all these pieces with all these stories and hold on to them for as long as you did?
Well, I think it's Sean. I think collectors have this gene that's I don't know if it's a possessive gene or it's an addiction or it's something that just grabs you. But any collector, I'll tell you like this. There was a guy I watched a story on one time. They have a lot of collector shows on, and this guy collected yo-yos. And anybody listens to that story, they go, "What? Yo-yos?" Now, this guy was extremely wealthy, lived in a massive mansion, and they went to go do the story on him. They drive up the big, huge gateway. He meets them. There's all these big cars at the front. This guy's got the cowboy hat, and he wants to show them his yo-yo collection. He had 15,000 yo-yos, and they were immaculately displayed in this beautiful cabinetry in this room. It was all beautifully decorated, and he's showing them all these, yo-yos and what he was looking for going forward. And the guy said, "You do realize this vase here? I don't know if it was the Ming Dynasty. This vase, how much is your collection worth? Oh, $75,000. This vase right here is worth more than the whole collection." He goes, yeah, my wife put that in here just to decorate. But look at this yo-yo I picked up in Sweden in 19. It was just obsessive. And you could see that I got it. Like you get it, right? Because it's just this thing where, it becomes obsessive with some guys. But what I looked at it as, I looked at myself as a preserver of history. And what I was the gatekeeper to the pieces. And what really excites me is finding a piece and then doing the research on it and finding out the story about every piece. Because see, you wouldn't buy a car without knowing the history. You wouldn't buy a pair of shoes without knowing something about it. So why should you have a collectible and not know anything about it? So I like to think every story has tentacles, and off of those tentacles come stories, and one story can lead to another. I can tell you one. Wayne Gretzky was at our place. We did a lot of charity work at our place, and that was one of the things. We had numerous athletes there, and the hockey players are obviously the best. And he had a picture of him breaking Gordie Howe's record. It was done by Leroy Neiman. It's a seriograph. And he looked at it and he said, "Mike," and I was showing him a Team Canada 78 sweater was underneath. It was actually Rick Vise, but he thought it was his. I said, "That looked familiar?" And I pointed the sweater to him. And he goes, oh, yeah, I remember that. And that was his breakout year as a 16-year-old playing for the World Juniors for Canada. But he pointed at the picture above it, which was that seriograph of his record break. And he goes, I got a funny story for on that lithograph. And I said, do tell. He said, well, Leroy Neiman used to come to a lot of our games in LA. And, you know, when that happened, one of the greatest feats in sports. He was in our green room talking to Luc Robitaille. And he said to Lucky, listen, is there something you'd like me to do for you guys to commemorate tonight with Wayne in this special occasion? I'd like to do something for you guys. And Lucky says, yeah, that'd be fantastic, Leroy. Awesome. Love to see that from you. So off he goes. 6, 7, 8 months later, Leroy calls me and he's got it. So they have a special dinner. They give Wayne the original copy. And they have this dinner with the whole team. And each member of the team got a copy of the seriograph. And then each member of the team got a bill to pay for it. Charge them. And they're all looking. And Gretzky could barely get through the story without starting to laugh. And so a few years later, after he told me that story, I had a guy by the name of Eric Bloom, who was the guy who is the sculptor who did Legends Row at Scotiabank with all the Maple Leafs. And I told him that story, and he goes, well, it's funny. I know Leroy, because I was teasing him. I said, one of your comrades, he got one of our hockey players out, like with that story on the. And if you look that picture up, by the way, you'll see that it says the LA Kings commissioned Leroy Neiman to do the picture when he actually sold it to them himself. He said, well, I know Leroy. Leroy used to do that all the time. And he says, matter of fact, he tried to do that to Muhammad Ali. After one of his fights in Zaire, he called Leroy and said, hey, and Leroy called Muhammad and said, Muhammad, would you like me to do something to commemorate the event? And he goes, why are you calling me Leroy? And he said, no. Do you want me to do something to commemorate the evening? I'll do a special thing for you. You don't need to call me. Anyway, he went on and on. Muhammad knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to get him and suck him in to buy a painting off him or a lithograph off him of some sort, right, to get him to do the job. And he wouldn't bite. He goes, you don't need my permission to do a picture. You go ahead. And he went. And so Eric, so you see how the story, that went from a lithograph or a seriograph, I keep calling lithograph, a seriograph that I bought in Las Vegas that I didn't even know existed when I bought it. And I was there with my wife, we saw it, and I bought it because I didn't realize he did 2 Wayne Gretzky lithographs. And that went from that to Wayne telling the story, to Robitaille, to Eric Bloom telling the story about Muhammad Ali, and on it went. And that's what I like to think of. And all my Maple Leaf collection is the same way. So every piece has a story and every piece leads to something else. And I can tell you, any person that's a collector will tell you, you walk into somebody's house that has, like I see the sweaters in the background. I've got 10 questions to ask you already with the 2 sweaters in the background already. Any place you go into, they would come down to the bottom steps of my place, and by the bottom step, once they finish listening to me for 10 minutes, they immediately relay a story themselves about collecting something or something that's important to them or precious to them, or that they have in their possession or they got given to them. And I don't care who they are. Somebody will tell you some sort of story.
Well, I'm curious as to who the first notable walked into that room and you're like, I can't, you just dropped Wayne Gretzky. That's a pretty big name walking into somebody's basement. Very few people, very few fans get that opportunity. But was he the first, or had there been many by that time? And who was the first that walked in? And I'm assuming it might have been somebody from Leafs history that walked down those stairs.
Well, it's actually really funny because when we did the room, it again, it's a little bit of a long story again, but when I was doing the collecting notes, just to tell you how people were, I was doing my thing and my friends started having babies and stuff like that. So I'd go over and I remember I gave my buddy one time, and Dave shows you how far back it was, when Dave Winfield was the star for the Jays, I gave him a rookie card of Dave Winfield, the San Diego Padres rookie card. It was in the glass case, and I gave him a box of hockey cards from that year. And I gave it to my buddy for his son. Born, I'm proud. I give this, here you go. There's a collectible for your son to get involved in this. And he just kind of looked at me like, geez, Wills, that's really nice, but can you got him a Fisher Price toy maybe? Or, that's but so that shows you where, people's mindset were not thought, you know what, people I guess don't really care. So I'm just going to have this little room down basement here, screen TV, put the bar in, and my buddies come over and watch sports. And somebody came over and said, no, you should be doing charity stuff. No, who want to come and see this? I honestly, to God, I thought that. Who'd want to come see this? This is my private thing, and just watch sports. And anyway, one thing led to another, and we got I guess some people took some pictures, a couple of friends. The Leafs got contacted me and came and did a special on it. And it was supposed to be one part that did two parts between periods of exhibition game for Leafs Nation Network, or the Leafs TV at the time it was called. And then it just sort of blossomed there. And then we started getting calls from people wanting to do charity things. So people then wanted to come over and start seeing it, and people I knew. So a buddy of mine Gary Roberts had his gym called Station 7. It was in Toronto. So I worked out there, not because Gary Roberts was there. One of the guys in my office was a real fitness freak, took me there. I didn't realize Roberts owned it and the way they were trained. So we started training there. So one of the guys that trained all the hockey players said, I want to bring some of the guys over. And this probably was the first. So Brad Boyes was not with the Leafs at the time, but had been drafted by the Leafs, came in. He was kind of the last to arrive, and he was kind of one of the bigger names that were there. And he said, well, it was one of those things that was, Mike, oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I've got to run. I got a hockey game at 8:30 tonight. I'm running, and all this kind of stuff, right? And I went, yeah, that's fine, Brad. Just come in, have a spin around, just take off, and you got to go. Well, at 8:30, he's standing there looking at stuff, and I said, Brad, I had a game at 8:30 because I'll screw that. I'm going to sit tonight, staying here. And Ron Ellis. So there was Brad and a bunch of the guys. He was one of the first, and Ron Ellis came. And so what happened that night was says, well, you know what? You sacrificed going to your hockey game night to stay here and enjoy this with you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something special for you. Let's see. So I looked around, and I had the dressing room door from Maple Leaf Gardens, the original one from 1931. And I looked, I said, you know what? Sign the door. You can be the first Maple Leaf to sign the door, and we'll get Maple Leafs to sign it from here on in. He went, no, you don't want me. Yeah, you were a first-round draft pick. Sign it. By the time we were finished on, 80 Maple Leafs signed it. Only Maple Leafs could sign it. I had over 80 on that door, and it's now in Ottawa. And it's probably, I think, one of the most iconic pieces of Leaf memorabilia that's in existence. But when Ron Ellis came over, he was probably the next big name to come. He was at an event, and the guy said, you got to come and see this. So they called me and said, Ron wants to come over. He'd like to see a picture of your place first before he comes. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. And he said, you know what? Tell him this. And I was being cocky. He comes over here and he doesn't like it or appreciate it. I'll buy him and his wife dinner at any restaurant in the city of Toronto. My choice, his choice. He went, well, I guess that's convincing enough. So Ron, same thing. He comes over and, he's late and he goes, it's this. Every guy that came over is always the busiest guy in Canada. Mike, swamp meeting, meeting, Mike, geez, sorry, I'm late. I got to run. I got no one up this. It's Ron, not a problem. Just come in, do what you have to do. We'll see. Well, 11 o'clock that night, as he's drinking another beer with me at the bar, he's asked me, can I bring some guys over from the alumni to come and see this? And he brought 8 guys over to watch a playoff game in Pittsburgh, actually, playoff game during the Stanley Cup Finals.
So, you know what's funny about those stories? You say the busiest guys in Canada. I find I'm just Sean Newman, right? I say that all the time. Listeners probably laugh at me every time I say it, but realistically, nobody knows me from a hole in the ground, right? And when you talk to people that probably get harassed all the time by media and fans and everything, that's like their protection method, right? I got things to get to. I'm busy. I can only give you so much time, always. And then if they like what you're doing, you can just see them kind of relax. And that's when the fun happens. That's the cool part of sitting down with, well, all the people you're talking about, all the people I've ever got, the opportunity to sit across from, is when you can get them to just let their guard down a little bit. I'm not here to, make you uncomfortable, ask you to do some things you don't want to do. Man, if you enjoy it, great. And if you don't, that's cool too, right? I hear that in you. And just from seeing the videos of your place, I don't know any hockey player, fan, coach, alumni, superstar who wouldn't walk down there and be like, wow, this is something.
Well, you see, the thing, Sean, about it is that everybody's got to remember is like just a couple of things for me, because I used to get asked by people all the time. Well, we've had, Bobby Orr down there, Phil Esposito, Gretzky, as I mentioned, Paul Coffey. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I mean, it's just unbelievable, the guys we've had there. Chris Hatfield, the astronaut, contacted us one time to come and see it. And because he'd heard his grandfather was a trainer with the Maple Leafs back in the 30s and wondered if I could do some research. So I did. And a friend of mine, Paul Patska, who's the ultimate Maple Leaf historian, we did a little presentation for him, and I did it. I gave a presentation to Chris and his couple of family members, and he came over one day and he was just in heaven. And I mean, it was just, he was in heaven. He's probably been close to it going in space. But the way I looked at it was, these guys, you got to remember, they were all kids too. They all had their heroes. They all pretended there was somebody in the driveway. a funny story, and he'll probably kill me if he ever hears the story. Is Brendan Shanahan. He was a great supporter. He wrote the foreword in my book, by the way. And if you read the foreword in the book, I'm giving a shameless self-promotion here, Sean. It's absolutely outstanding, and it's worth buying the book just to read that. Shanahan came over and he supported a number of our charity events and was fantastic. So my son won the events when we had a big slew of people there, and this was, we had all the guys. My son was watching the Blue Jay game. We're outside. It was during the summer. And he's watching the Jays game, and he knew the guys. All of a sudden, he heard somebody coming down the stairs behind him, kind of slow. And he kind of looked back, and it was Brendan with his phone out, filming the room to show his son. And he'd been there a number of times, and he's filming it. And so he got to the bottom of the stairs, and he saw Ryan, and he thought, okay, it's fine. It's just Ryan. So he's filming more. Some people come down the stairs, put his phone away, and went over to the bar and pretended he was getting a drink, like off the bar, just talked to the people for a few minutes. Then after he brought his phone back, because, he's president of Maple Leafs, he can't be looking like he's a fan. So, but he is. And they're all like that. And the way I used to look at it, I used to make a joke. And I said, well, how do you guys, when you got these stars all coming to your place all the time? Well, first off, it's for charity, so it's for the right reason. I'm raising money. And I always say, look, I got to look at these guys on the same level. You played minor hockey. I'm much similar to you. I played in Europe, and I played, for the Australia Terriers, and played a little of that type of hockey and stuff like that. I said, look, the way I look at it is, I played the game that they played. They were way better than I am. But I'll tell you what, come on down to Bay Street. I worked on Bay Street for 40 years. Sit in a trading desk for a week, and we'll see who the star is. So let's do that comparative. And I tell someone, well, I got that story. Now I'm going to be a name dropper here from Wayne Gretzky, because we played golf with him one time. And it was during the Tiger shootout at Sherwood in California. Somebody said, what's Tiger like? Did he give you a hard time about playing golf? He go, yeah, he tried to bust my chops a few times, but I just looked at him and said, let's put a pair of skates on you. Let's see what you do. And he said, that shut him up pretty quickly. He never said another word.
Probably the coolest thing you've said thus far in my eyes is you became so good at your craft that Chris Hatfield, of all people, is going, hey, can you look up something like that? That's a pretty cool story, Mike.
Oh, Sean, it was so funny because Debbie, my wife, she had gone to she worked on Bay Street too. So she went to a luncheon put on by association on the street at the IDA. And she went, and Hatfield was one of the speakers. So her older son was really into space and a lot of kinds. He was selling his book. She went and got it signed. So coincidentally, about a week later, we get a contact from him, and she'd made a joke about not about the Leafs, but about her son being a big fan, and that's what the book was for. We get the contact from him. Could he come over and see the room? And she's looking, I just saw this guy a week ago. How would he know? Like, where's all that coming from? And sure enough, it was just a coincidence. And because when he came over, he hadn't even clued in because he signed some, but he was a Major League Leaf fan. Now he teased me, because he said, now, Mike, what you would like, so he was telling us all the stories about dropping the puck from space, and they taped all the games for him, and they would send them to him, and they have to work out every day they have a gym on the capsule, and he had to ride the treadmill. He rode he's in really good shape. So he ran on the treadmill for 2 hours every day, but he'd watch Leaf games. They'd send him to him, and he would never know the score. So he said that one of the things he had on there, it was registered as a NASA piece, was he brought a Maple Leaf crest on a plaque. And he looked at me, he goes, how would that look down here? And I said, my eyes must have been as big as like Gene Wilder or one of those, but like that. And he went, didn't mean to tease you, Mike. I gave it to Larry Tannenbaum and his wife last night. They're going to put it in the Leaf. They're going to put it in the hall with the Leafs. But he said that he was listening to every game. In Game 7 against Boston 2013, the disaster Game 7, he was listening to the game and watching it, and they were landing. And they hit the water. He couldn't watch the rest of the game. Like, he's got to worry about landing and get off the spacecraft and get home. And he gets off. They get him on the boat, and they bring the family to him to talk to him. His wife, first thing he said, what was the score in a Leaf game? First thing he said to his wife after coming from space. So he shared that story with us, and it was a pretty cool experience. Like, it was pretty awesome. But you're right. The people that come down there, we've had politicians, billionaires, musicians. I don't know if a guy Tom Hicks, the singer, the country western, big guy from Nashville. He came over and played at our event, and he wanted to tour the basement, and more than anything, and look at all the Leaf stuff. So it's the fan and everybody that comes out. So I guess the pleasure I had, or the privilege I got, was to see this from them, that other side of the people, because you're in somebody's home. It's not like you go to the Royal York and, Wayne Gretzky gets out of a cab or gets out of a car, and by the time he's got to the elevator, 200 people are ready to follow him because the guys are all on the phone telling all the buddies, Wayne's here and come on down. And by the time he gets upstairs, there's, hundreds of people trying to talk to him, and then he's looking for the X to get out of there. Whereas you come to a home and there's 100 people there, there's nobody else there. So it's a much more relaxing atmosphere. So we had that luxury of being able to do that. So that gave us a little bit of an edge up. And plus, it was very topical stuff, and most people have stories. I mean, even Derek Sanders, he said he was a Leaf fan growing up, and he was getting interviewed, and he goes, "I hope that's not going on TV. Is that going on TV? Nobody know that. Hell, it's fine." But it's just the way it is. Danny Gare told me, we had him on our podcast last week, Squid and I, and he said, "I was a Leaf fan growing up. I cheered for all those guys. I love Dave Keon and Dick Duff because they're little guys like me, and I use those guys as inspiration. But I watched every Leaf game." So, it's just this, bonding thing that people have. And I guess just while you're giving me the moment here, the thing that people don't understand about the Toronto Maple Leafs that makes them separate, and I know all other fans out there, the Montreal fans, are going to be cringing and clawing at the screen, ready to poke my eyes out. But this is what Toronto is so much different than any other sports franchise probably in the world. The Yankees, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and all these baseball teams, yes, they're big dynasties and been around for a long, Cincinnati, but they all had their radio networks, but they were options. In the 30s, when the games were started to be broadcast across the nation by Foster Hewitt, we're in the middle of the Great Depression. The country was crippled till 1939. Radio was in its infancy stages. It was growing exponentially through every year, but slow because content was an issue. So the biggest entertainment for people in those days was, because they couldn't afford to do anything, was listen to the radio. And what was the form of entertainment? The hockey game Saturday nights. So anything west of Ontario, Saturday nights, the only game they would get, because it was in English, was the Leaf game. And east, it'd be a combination of the Leafs and Montreal, mostly Montreal. So families grew up sitting around the radio back in the 30s and 40s, listening to those Leaf games as a family. And that would be passed down from generation to generation. And the other part of the story is that Foster Hewitt's broadcasts were soon sent overseas to the troops during the war to entertain them and keep these guys motivated and keep these guys alive. I've spoke at Sunnybrook Hospital, which is a veterans hospital, and those guys, there's some of them who were around, and it kept them alive. They said that was so important to them. Some of these guys are 100 years old, and that's the kind of stuff that kept them alive, was those Foster Hewitt broadcasts. So they would tell those stories to their children, to their grandchildren, to their grandchildren's grandchildren. So it was more about the bonding of the team, not the wins and losses. It's what that team meant to each family. And when I did my tour of Following the Maple Leafs, that came through loud and clear, particularly in Western Canada. Yeah, they may be a Calgary Flames fan, but below that, Maple Leafs are next. Winnipeg, same thing. Vancouver, anywhere you went, you would see that. And that, I think that history, if you understand about, that's what makes the Leafs so much more special than, say, other teams, because they just had the demographic and they had the country basically. It was like the Raptors winning the NBA title. Everybody in Canada was cheering for them because they were it. They were the only team. If Vancouver still had a team, it would have probably been a split audience. But, that was the one thing that Toronto had, and that's remained, and that is what's so unique about the team. I mean, and everybody likes to look at them as the lovable losers like the Boston Red Sox and Chicago Cubs. But think about this. Chicago Cubs and Boston Red Sox didn't win for 100 years. Both had the two most iconic buildings or parks in probably all of sports. Yet they both won finally. Now people look at them, they're no longer lovable losers and all that kind of stuff anymore. Now they're just two good ball teams with great ballparks, with history. Whereas Toronto, it means so much more. Those were about the wins and losses. Toronto, yeah, they haven't won, but it means so much more to the families. So I would suspect that if the Leafs, if they ever win in my lifetime, hopefully, if they do win one, I think what it'll do, it'll bring a whole new generation of fans on side, and this thing will probably even get greater. And I'm sorry to say that to your Montreal fans and all Vancouver fans and all the rest of you guys, but that's, I think, what will happen.
First off, I'm an Oilers fan. And so born and bred Oilers fan. And the worst games ever to go to, ever, are when the Maple Leafs come to town, because they outnumber us in our home building. Like, I don't know, 60-40, 70-30, something like that. Like it sucks. And, Rough Riders. I was thinking there's two fans in my brain that when you travel the world and go to different sports venues that you'll see all the time are Toronto Maple Leafs and Saskatchewan Roughriders. And they both have very similar things in common. What you're saying about back in the day when there wasn't all these teams, anybody in Western Canada listened to the English broadcast because that makes most sense. And totally. Saskatchewan has the same thing in Saskatchewan, the Rough Riders, because there's no other pro team. I mean, now there is lacrosse coming, and they've been very good. But there's a reason why growing up as a kid in Saskatchewan, you are a diehard Rough Riders CFL fan, because we literally had nothing else. And so that spreads across. Everybody's proud to wear those jerseys. Where doesn't matter. I married a girl from Minneapolis, and we go to Vikings games, and you'll be walking through the crowd, and like clockwork, you'll see a Rough Rider jersey, and you're like, what the heck is that doing here? And then you stop and talk to them because it's easy and they're proud of it, and they're good old Saskatchewan boys. Now, for people who don't realize, Mike, we got to talk about this touring for a full year, going to every single Maple Leaf game in the 2018-2019 season, because not every home game, not every away game, every game.
Yep.
Where did the idea come from? Not even where did the idea come from. When did you think the idea was plausible?
So I got this. I got the idea from a guy. I'm a big Notre Dame football fan, so I used to go to games, and I met a guy down there, and I collect Notre Dame stuff too. So I got a few things off of him over the years. Anyway, this guy, when he graduated in 1977, he has not missed a game at Notre Dame on the road or at home since. It's over 400 and change now, whatever it is. But, and I thought, what a cool idea that is. I should do something like that for the Leafs when I retire one day. So I kicked it. But because what Deb and I were always thinking about is, because we started getting fairly well known in the charity world and in the hockey world, and because of the stuff we're doing, and I'm getting notes every day of the week from people, I still do, emails from people daily on their collections, trying to sell me things, offer me things, asking my opinion, or just telling a story, because I'm all about the stories. And I thought, how do we extend that? Like, we've got this, and this Leaf network, it went beyond my reaches where I thought it would go, because I get emails from everywhere. So I thought, what better way than to go out maybe and find out what it is about? Why do people cheer for this team so passionately when this team hasn't won since 1967, and there's generations of kids that never even seen them win anything? So what better way than to go out and see right to their face? Like, why are there 6 guys from Winnipeg sitting in Minnesota on a Monday night in the middle of January, and it's 30 below zero outside? The Leafs are 6 games out of a playoff spot, and these guys are all decked head to toe in Leaf stuff. They've just driven 7 hours to go to the game. Like, why, or 4.5 hours? Why are they doing that? And I think that's the story. And so we thought about doing it for the centennial year, for the 100th anniversary. I was still working, so that kind of got in the way. We actually talked to the Leafs about it, and they loved the idea. And we were talking about maybe doing a caravan with my collection and going from city to city, talk about the 100th anniversary. And that didn't really pan out. So in winter of 2018, I was tired now. Deb and I were in Florida walking around and said, you know what? I really want to do this fall of the Leafs. I think there's no better year than this year. And I was expecting a little pushback. She said, wait a year, let's plan it. And she said, no, I agree. We walked back to the condo, started planning, like thinking about who I could stay with in different cities and stuff like that. The schedule came out June 24th. And within 2 weeks, it was all planned, the whole thing. Every trip was booked, hotel room, everything was all booked. And then they signed John Tavares within that about a week before we finished it. And then it just went bananas after that.
Okay, I got a couple questions now. What did you do for a daytime job? What were you doing before this?
40 years. So I played hockey for a few years and stuff like that when I was in my 20s. And I started in a brokered business back then in the summer working. And I stayed in the business for 40 years.
Well,
so I had a good
where did you play hockey?
I played in Europe. Played in Europe. I played here in Toronto. Played in Sweden.
Played in Sweden. I played in Finland for a little bit.
Way back. I played a long time ago, Sean. Way before you. Back in the 70s. So I'm an old man. And so when I came back, and I worked. And it's funny because I was trying to go to play. I was playing Division 2, and I tried to move up to Division 1. They wouldn't really, your card you had, they wouldn't release me with my card. So I had to come back to Toronto because you got to sit out here. The cards only cost like $100, but they held that card and they can transfer it. And they wanted to charge the team for the card, which is what they do. And I was going to cut them out of my salary though. So I said, I'll come back home. So I came home and played for the Orillia Terriers for a year, but I never ended up going back because I got this job. And I stayed in the business. I think I made the right decision. And so I stayed, and it's really funny. So, we've always had the opportunity to go to games. I've had season tickets for years and stuff like that. And I worked on a very hockey-oriented firm, so really sports. But, I wanted to do something special. And I thought, how do we extend it? So we thought, we'll go out there. I'll go to every city. I'll talk to fans. I want to get their stories. Tell me why they're Maple Leaf fans, why they cheer for this team. I was going to document it all, record it. I didn't even know how to use a camera. And I'm going to be interviewing these people. I'm going to be on my own. So what we did was I would be on the road, documented this. I then spoke to Toronto Sun, got involved. They wanted me to do a story weekly. I worked with Lance Hornby, who's a well-known journalist and one of the best in the country. He would, fix it for me, and we'd put a weekly column in the Sun about my travels. And so what I did, I would travel around, I would take pictures, do interviews. Deb got me 8 lessons at Black's Camera. No, at, what's it called? Oh God, the name of Henry's in Toronto. I didn't even know how to turn the camera on. I remember the first day, she buys me this camera, like a, idiot proof one, you just take pictures and you can do videos. And the guy says, okay, everybody, you're used to your 35 millimeter, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, right? Film. And so there's 10 people in this class and they all go, yeah. The guy at the back, you're Mike. Mike, you didn't, I don't know, what is that? That's the film, right? Oh God. And then he said, okay, everybody turn your camera on. Mike, you have another problem. How do I do that? So that's how I started in the camera. Okay, shots up. They all thought I was a moron, which I was. And then all of a sudden they found out what I was doing because they're kind of looking at me, okay, what's this stiff doing in this class? Why are you here? And then finally, because I thought, I'm sorry, I'm holding you guys up. And then I told them, and all of a sudden, they all helped me. So I learned how to take pictures. So I would take the pictures, do the interviews, send them back to Debbie. And then we had somebody who was working with us, a friend of ours who does marketing. So they would do the social media stuff. And we'd pick a meeting spot every game. Like at ACC at the time, Scotiabank, it became third level in the draft deck, the Molson draft deck. We'd meet there every second intermission. The first intermission, I'd go in the NHL alumni box, the Leaf box, and go see players and talk to those guys and get their stories. Then I would meet people in the second period. And on the road, I'd pick a spot, okay, depth, section, blah, 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 second intermission, right here, I'll meet them here. And we'd pick a good spot if there was room. So the crowd started getting bigger and bigger as the season went on, and people were coming by, and I'd try to interview them and get pictures, and it got a little hectic at times. And then we just send them all back. And then I'd go back to the seats when the game would start, and I'd be sending all the stuff back to her. And then she was answering Instagram and doing this. So it was a whole process. So it was a job. And I never drank at any of the games. I got offered 10 beers on probably a game. But, I didn't want to be talking to fans, or if a confrontation happened with a drunk or something, I didn't want booze in my breath, or talking to a young family or something like that. And besides, if I got a glass in my hand and somebody comes along, I got to take a picture of a crazy guy. I don't want to, I got nowhere to do anything. So I couldn't eat either. So a lot of times it wasn't glamorous. I'd be back at the hotel with a Subway sandwich and a chocolate milk or a water and eating that and typing away all my notes at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and getting up at 4 a.m. to go catch a flight to the next place. And that was my life. I loved every minute of it.
Loved every minute of it?
Every minute of it. Wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It's the biggest thing I hope people can take away from this, and when you read my book, is the fact that you can do it too. I want other people to do the same thing, because I ran into so many families, guys, groups that were doing similar type things. They would pick one destination every year and go to a Leaf game, but tie it around a football game and a baseball game or something. Or they would go to the 3 California games and the Leafs played out there, or the 3 Western games and the Leafs played out there, or do a couple of the New York type games that they played there. You'd run into this everywhere, fathers and sons doing this. And it was just awesome seeing this type of stuff. And they're all out there. when they're all out there doing this. And I'm encouraging them. I met a girl in Winnipeg that she's just going to slowly do every rink that the Leafs play in and see them play over the next 5 or 6 years. All kinds of people doing things like this. It's fun. I get all these young guys, oh, yeah, man, you're some rich guy doing this and that guy. So, whoa. How old are you? Oh, I'm 24. Okay. Well, I'm 64 at the time. I got you by 40 years. Why don't you save $100 a week? That means have 2 less drinks. Okay. When you're out drinking every night with your buddies, 2 less drinks, maybe. Okay. Or drink something stronger and put $100 away a month. Okay. For the next 40 years, guess what? You can do what I did in my retirement. After 40 years working. Yeah, you're right, man. I never thought of that. Great idea. So I mean, it can be done. I slept on people's couches with friends of ours. I took trains, planes.
I could be wrong, but that's probably where a lot of the fun came, was from rolling into somebody's place, sleeping on the couch, and having a beer with them instead of being alone in a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, and they were all friends of mine. Like, I'd call these guys, and by the end of it, they're all volunteering to come and they'd pick me up, take me around. But what I'd also do is I would go to every city I went into. I'd go and try and find some historical site sports-wise that relate to Toronto. Like in Pittsburgh, I heard Mick Kern on the NHL Network talking. By the way, that bugger, I sent him a note. He didn't send me a note. He went to where Mazeroski was 68th anniversary of the home run that won the World Series for Pittsburgh in 1960. Well, I went and looked at that spot. The wall is still there. Part of the wall is still there. The spot where he hit the home run is marked, and home plate is across the street in the building in the floor. So I went and took pictures of all that and sent those stories back. Huntington, like Fenway Park is not the first place the Boston Red Sox won the World Series. It's at Huntington Avenue grounds, and it's inside the university now, and it's all marked. So I went in there and found that and learned a little bit of the history of that. I hadn't seen it. Matthews Arena was Boston Arena, where the Bruins play a little bit and the Celtics play a little bit there. It's called Matthews Arena, of course, with the Boston Matthews thing. But it's one of the oldest rinks. It's the oldest rink in existence. That was owned by an NHL team, original home to original team, that's still used today.
Wow!
And it's used by the university. And in Columbus, Taft Coliseum. 1918 it was built, one of the oldest rinks in existence. This has the highest ceiling I've ever seen in my life, Sean. It's got to be 100 feet high. It holds 6,000 people, and the Columbus Chill played there. And it was the success they had at that rink that led to the Columbus Blue Jackets coming into existence. So I would do this in every city I went to, just from going to see the Fabulous Forum, which I'd been there before. And I remember going there during the crazy days with McNall taking the team and all the movie stars. I remember because we were friends with John Tavelli through a buddy of mine, and we got into the Forum Lounge, like underneath where the restaurant was. The Forum Club was the hottest spot in the city at the time, and every celebrity in the world was there in LA. And the bar was loaded with like I'm looking over and there's Jason Bateman and Greg Norman and and all these guys all in the bar, and I'm going, what are we doing in here? And so I went back and looked at that. And now it's still used for concerts, and the new football stadium was just built across the street. In the Staples Center, of course. So I would go and look at all the stuff like that in every city. So I made it, sort of like a traveling journey also, like for people to look at and say, there's more than just going to hockey games too, even though that's the best part. And then looking at all the rinks.
Wait, you say anyone can do it. How much did it cost you to pull that off?
It was by the time I was probably done, we haven't done the exact number, but we did do roughly probably around 40,000 by the time it was all done.
So a good chunk of change then.
Yeah, but you know what? So if you go to if you went to a place like Hawaii, or you went to LA for 2 weeks or something like that, and you weren't doing everything discounted, think about what it cost you. You're looking at 10, 15 grand. Like, these trips aren't cheap anymore to go anywhere. But don't forget, I've booked these 6-7 months in advance. We use points. We used the cheapest fares. If I had to go 2 spots, I did. I sat in the cheapest seats. I sat in second last row of every building, right at the top. And that's another cool moment. I remember I walked out, and every time I walk out, I would get down the steps and I'd do this to make sure my phone was right there in my top of my coat, where I had a pocket there. No, sorry, back pocket. And I do this to make sure my glasses are there, my phone in back pocket. I didn't do it in Columbus, and I get to the bottom and I'm walking, no glasses, no phone. Shit. So I go back right up to the top. Phone was under the seat, and I had everything on it. I get back down. No glasses. When I bend over, they fell. Oh God! I never told you I was smart, by the way. Anybody watching this? Never. But I come out a back door and I'm walking up Nationwide Boulevard around the side of the rink. And all of a sudden it was a cold night and it was in December. And I'm talking to Deb on the phone about the next stage trip. And we're just about the game. And she watches all the game. All of a sudden I heard a trumpet player. And this guy's playing O Canada. Crisp, you know, those cold nights. You're from out west. Those crisp, cool nights when you can hear every sound. It's just so perfect. And I mean, I don't want to make this emotional and get everybody crying, you know, because that's not the idea. But all of a sudden I stop at Deb. I got to go look at this. Hang on a second. So I go over to the front of the rink and there's this guy playing the trumpet, playing O Canada. And around it, all the Canadian fans stand around that side singing O Canada. There isn't a cooler moment in the world than that. Outside of in Minnesota, when the Leafs played that outdoor game at the rink right across from the XL Center, the little outdoor rink, they played, Jake Gardner's dad started this a couple of years ago, and they played for the Gardner Classic. They called, and they play 3-on-3 in this little outdoor. So I walked over to see it. And I'd done an event with Connor Brown 2 nights before, and he said, and I forgot about it. And he said, we got the skate, that come to that. So I went, it was outside, and there was a couple of people standing around watching these guys, but there you could come around a corner and you heard that sound of skates cutting into the ice outside. You know, that echoing sound.
Oh, beautiful sound. Maybe one of the best sounds in the world.
It's absolutely awesome. And then we could hear the voices carrying and the guys chirping each other. And then all of a sudden pucks bouncing, banging off the boards. And you just think, I come around and you see the players and their breath you can see in the air. And I'm telling you, I had a tear in my eye. I'm not ashamed to say it. It was so Canadian. It should have been wrapped in a strip of bacon and a big Canadian flag around it. And then the best part of the story is after the players leaving the rink, there's a little kiosk. There's no dressing room or anything. You put your skates on and go in. There's a little kiosk selling hot dogs. And there's the players with drinks in their hands, hot dogs, skates over their shoulders, carrying their sticks and full equipment, go back to the bus, eating hot dogs like they were 6 years old again. It was the most awesome experience. So those are the type of things that the normal fan or people don't get to see. And these are the type of things that come along with things like this. You expect the unexpected. And that is what I wide open eyes. And I'm telling you, I got tons of stories like that. It was so cool. And the way I looked at it with the money, we just try to keep everything on the cheap. You know, as I said, I'm eating Subway sandwiches, on Thanksgiving Day. I didn't think about my traveling well that day. I arrived in Columbus and that was in November. They played there twice. I arrived there, not a store, nothing open, nothing. There was a CVS open, so I had to go to CVS. I walk up there and I'm coming back with chips, milk, and I'm trying to buy some cereal, and that's my night out. And Deb was coming the next morning. I said, geez, she showed up later that night, sorry. I said, really know how to show a guy a good girl a good time. No drinks, nothing. And I guess that's what I'm eating all these. That was my dinner that night, and for both of us. Next day we had a good breakfast, and we went out and had fun. But it was, these are the type of things that you do, and if you do it right, and you think about it, you got lots of friends. Tell all the guys now, just get friendly with all your buddies in all the NHL cities, and to tell them you'll be coming out to visit them.
Well, you've been then to all the stadiums.
Yeah.
You gotta, if you're not going to go against the Leafs. The Leafs got the best fans in the world. In the NHL, though, in all the other buildings you visited, first off, who's got the second best fans that you saw?
Well, there's lots. See, where you get a surprise is, and I'm not skating around this question, Sean, but you go into New Jersey, rink is, half full, maybe 3/4 full, but the fans that are there are into it. Like and they know their stuff. And they're screaming, they're yelling, they're cheering. They know the players. And it's really funny because one guy, there was a minute left in the period, and this guy gets up, he's got the hat, the sweater, big guy, and he's got the beer in his hand. He goes, not sticking around here. It's never ending. I don't like this. Anytime I hear something bad always happens at the last minute. And he leaves. The Leafs came down, bang, 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 and scored a goal to put them up 4-1, I think it was. So I go out in the hall, and there's this guy standing, and he's just shaking his head. I tell you guys like this, and he's like, So I walked up to him, and I said to him, look, not to rub this in, but come from where I come from, I know exactly your pain. And he said, I can't even gloat. because I know exactly what you're going through. And, normally a guy could punch you in the head for walking up, but this guy looked at me, he puts his arm around and hugs me and he goes, thanks, brother, I needed that. So, you get that and, guys, but then you go into places like Montreal where it's pretty crazy and the atmosphere is so electric. I found that because there's so many Leaf fans at a lot of these places, it's kind of a mixed crowd. Like all the Western Canadian cities, it's tough because when Toronto's in, it's a special night.
Well, I've already said when the Leafs come to town, you're right. You might as well go to those when the Leafs aren't playing because the Leafs pack in on probably every single building. Better question then, Mike, is what building did you go to where there was hardly any Leafs fans at?
Well, did you just walked right into my answer? My answer is going to be now the one wasn't fair was the night that Tavares went back to Long Island. That was disgusting. And that's Long Island. And that's in Nassau Coliseum, a little tiny little rink, low ceiling. You get 13,000 people in there and it's loud. It started in the parking lot because they in Philadelphia and Carolina tailgate. And the tailgating went on there. So I arrived here, it was like a football night. And the tailgating was starting, smoke and everything. But these guys were they knew it was going to be rough for Tavares going back. So I walk up and the Marriott is there. It was the only thing in the area. There's nothing around. I mean, this makes Ottawa, Canada look like Midtown Manhattan. Okay. So the fans got to walk across the parking lot from the Marriott. And there's all these yahoos. There's one couple, they're older couple. They got Tavares sweaters on. They're walking across holding hands. These guys, like every obscenity you can think they were throwing at them, again, loud and screaming, every name you can think of. So there's a guy beside me, and this guy just rips into them. And I looked at the guy. We catch eyes. I look and I go, like, really, them? Like, okay, the yahoos, guys yelling, okay, but them? And he goes, whatever. So I go inside, and every Leaf game, probably you're at least like places like Columbus, 15 rows deep from the red line right around the end to the other side, the horseshoe, Leaf fans in a pregame warm-up. Buffalo, automatic. Montreal, you would see that. But all the obvious places, Detroit. But when you see that in Columbus, you go to LA and you see that, you start thinking, holy jeez. But then I go to Long Island, not one. They started screaming, calling him every name in the book. It started in the warm-up, and it didn't stop. They were winning. They're winning at the end of the game. They smoked the Leafs that night. They're still chanting and jeering him at the end of the game. It never stopped. The second game, they tried to do it again, but he scored the winner, so I kind of shut them up. So that was the only game where I saw no Leaf sweaters at all. And I would say Boston hated that place. Went there 6 times. And I guess as I told people, and they'll probably take this as a badge of honor because I would say every male Bruins fan that came to the front gate with a Bruins sweater on and a hat, if it didn't blow over the legal limit 3 times, they weren't allowed in the building. Okay, so that's the way I sort of sum that one up. And that they are so loud there, and the first time there was a good group of Leaf fans. The second time, regular season game, a little less, and as the season progressed, less and less and less to the end. So Boston's pretty staunch on their guys. And most of the original 6 teams are like that. Chicago, because that was different there because with Stan Mikita, they were honoring him that night. So it was mostly all Hawks. That was a little bit light. But, I didn't really find it because, again, the thing that people don't realize is that the Toronto fans here, it's funny, the Leafs lose a game. And I'm walking the sub, and I used to love listening to the comments. Oh, they're no good. Defense is no good. Matthews is not good. Marner, they're overrated. They lose by goal. And this goes on every game. Whereas out west, if they lost, and actually they had a pretty good, they had a stinker against Vancouver. But if they have a bad game, you know what? The fans don't even care about the score. They're just there because here's their team coming in. Again, the connection they have with that hockey club, they get to see them live once. That's all that matters to them. There's a bar in Vancouver called the Regal Beagle, and it's a Maple Leaf bar. A guy from Oakville moved out there, it would be 11 years now. He had nowhere to watch his Maple Leafs play because nobody's carrying the game. So then he satellite and all that. He started watching the game when NHL Network came. He was the manager of this bar. He asked the owner if he could make it a bit of a Leaf hangout. Guy said, fine, as long as you don't go too crazy. So they decorated it up a little bit. They've got about a dozen people. Now they have hundreds. When they started 11 years ago, they had a dozen people. Now they have hundreds, and it's lined up to get in for playoff games when they make the playoffs. And They all meet there on game day when the Leafs come into town. They have some juice all afternoon. Then they go en masse to the game that night, and if the Leafs win, they head back. So the Leafs, and I went there and visited the night before. I went and met a bunch of them. And of course, the Leafs lost to Vancouver, so there was nobody going back after. So, I mean, there's all those type of things that happen in every city that take away from it. There's the Orange County expat group in Anaheim, where there's 2,500 people that are all ex-Canadians, or Canadians that are expats. They all go to all the Canadian games, but the Leaf one is the biggest one. LA, they have like 8,000. And in San Jose, there's 2,500, 3,000 of them. They all go in en masse. So it's hard to pin the fans, but New York was the worst. Boston, I would say, but New York was an anomaly because of the one time. So Boston, I would say, Montreal, all the good teams, you can tell, like the good teams. Now, the Leafs had a pretty good road record that year. So, the home teams were losing a little bit. So the crowd was taken out of the game sometimes. So that kind of helped. The best rink, by the way, 3 best rinks: a Little Caesars in Detroit, Rogers Place in Edmonton, phenomenal. And my third one, Las Vegas, was T-Mobile.
So what was it about the 3 rinks that stood out to you as a fan experience?
Well, because they're all brand new, first off. Now, from a fan experience, the thing about me, though, is I get asked this all the time. Every time I go through the gate and I hear that buzzer go ask, number one, that was me getting in. I know I'm officially in the game, so that took a burden off of pressure. Every time I step through that turnstile and I go out, and I always check the pregame warm-up to have a quick look to see what the Leafs are kind of doing and how they look, I get excited right away. Every rink is good. I don't care. And Long Island, even though it's probably the worst rink in the league, I loved it because with low ceiling, it was loud. And I mean, do you know who Fireman Ed is? The guy from the Jets. He's the guy who's famous, the old fireman. He would get up and get the chant of the fans going. He'd go, Jets, and they'd go, Jets, Jets, Jets. Well, they did that for the Islanders, only with a goal. The Islanders, they'd go, yes, 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 yes. And the whole crowd would chant it. And it was take off on this guy. And it was so loud. And they would do 4 chants against the Leafs. And then all of a sudden somebody with the chant would come out, and the Rangers suck. Every 4th or 5th chant would be going. I mean, it was an awesome atmosphere. And even though it was bad, the first one, the second time was a little more balanced. You had to sit and laugh. In Nashville would probably be right up there too, because they've got chants for everything, for the power play, for the penalty kill. They're introducing the players. Starting at left wing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike Wilson, boo, you suck. And then all of a sudden, playing center, Austin Matthews, you suck too. And it would just be everybody.
So is that the fan base then, or is that the ownership of the team kind of marketing that help builds and instills that? Because those buildings are fun to go to. Like when you walk into some of them, you're like, wow, now this is something spectacular. Vegas always sticks out because in recent memory, they have like this pregame routine that you're like, it's over the top. It's almost too much, but it's so Vegas and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and Nashville's the same, but I think it's a combination of both, Sean. I think the fans and the management kind of encourage it. It's in Vegas, yeah, you got a band playing up in the corner. You got the dancing girls with all the thing on the skates. And I mean, even the 50-50 draws 51-49 in their favors because the house never loses in Vegas. You get all these type of things and all this stuff going on throughout the leagues. And Edmonton is just a spectacular sight lines is what I liked about it. And just the entrance to the building, they have that Hall of Fame kind of wing on the outside.
Well, when I saw your room, I went, geez, that's like straight out of what they did in Edmonton. I mean, except yours is Leafs and yours has got what looks to be about 1,000 more pieces than what they got in that room.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, that was awesome. And Little Caesars, they kind of tried to make it, would use the same sort of brickwork and the same kind of hue. There's a word I don't use too often. I guess kind of the color similar to the Olympia from the old original ring.
Yeah.
Not the original sign on the inside. Spectacular. But, there's so many fun rinks. Nashville's the best place in the whole circuit. And I tell you, you're a Westerner, so you're probably a country and Western guy. But you know what? I'm not a country and Western guy. I had the time of my life there. It was the best place by far. Most fun. everything. You got one end, you got the Tennessee Titan Stadium. At this end, Nationwide Arena. In between is all the bars and all the the honky tonk places and all that. It's nuts. It's just a party city. Every fan should go there once and watch a game. You just go into you party all day, go into the rink, come out, take 10 steps, and you're back in it again. It's nothing like it. And Vegas is crazy, but Vegas is too corporate now and too expensive. It's crazy.
So it has been 53 years now since the Leafs won the Cup.
7, yeah.
So are they going to win in your time?
I hope so. I hope so. They've got the, they definitely have the ability. They got the talent. A lot of things got to go right, as you know. To win any kind of championship, I don't care in what sport it is, everything has to go right. Everything. And is it going to happen? I like some of the moves they've made this year so far in the offseason. It was the free agency and the draft. I was just listening to the guy today. What site is he from? Scout. And they picked the kid. The guys, I was listening to Spit and Chicklets, and the guys were talking to him, and he said that they asked who's the pick in the first round that's going to be a surprise pick, like it should have been higher.
And it was the Russian kid.
The Leafs kid, the Leafs pick. And he went, oh no, the Leaf fans are going to go nuts. Everything goes, nope, he's the pick. Anyway, but who the hell knows? I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's a prospect and you have no idea what's going to happen. But do I think they're going to win one? Yes, I do. I have confidence in management, and I think they're doing the right things. But at some point, the players have to be accountable, and they got to step up. I mean, it's no different than what's going on in Edmonton with the ability they have there in the talent. It's only one winner every year. A lot of teams want to win, right? There's going to be 31 teams, 32 soon chasing that, and only one wins. So,
isn't that the truth? Well, you've had the room, you've had the trip now. You have 2 books out, one just very recently.
Yes.
What are you going to do now?
Well,
what's the next thing you're going to knock off the bucket list?
That's a very good question, Sean. Very good question. Well, I hope to milk this book for a little while, hopefully, and get some speaking engagements to go and talk about it. I have a podcast with Ricky Vive that's his nickname, Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan. That's on the Hockey News site. We've got some interesting guests coming up. So that takes a lot of time. I'm going to be working. I hope they do, when we can get back doing again, hopefully do some speaking, work on the book. There's talk of us doing a second book because what we did was the original book I did was on the part of the collection. And the plan was to do a second volume of that on we did 50 or 60 pieces of the collection, the first book. And the second one, we're talking about maybe doing it again. So that would be another project possibly down the road. But right now I'm just enjoying, I'm supposed to be retired, but I'm working harder now than I was working actually. So got the book, love talking about the book, talk about the Leafs, all that kind of stuff. So just hopefully I can keep doing that.
Before we get to the final segment, which is the Crude Master Final Five, can you toss out if you're on social media, that kind of thing? I'm sure if people want to track you down,
Yes.
They can find you.
UltimateLeafsFan.com. Squid in the ULF, I believe, is our Twitter handle. Ultimate Leaf Fan is my Instagram, and you Leafs at you Leafs Fan is my Twitter handle.
Okay,
So
cool.
reach out and send us a note. And actually, if you got any questions for the podcast, ask me.
Okay.
We'll have to ask our guests.
Okay. Well, I got 5 questions for you before I let you go. Go as long or short as you want. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if I asked this at the start, but now I've been thinking about it as I'm going, oh crap, I forgot to ask this. But along the way, and I'm sure you got asked this a ton, but the whole point of going on this road trip, the 89 games, seeing every Leafs game, was to interact with the fans and hear the stories. What was one of the most memorable stories you had from the trip?
Oh, there's many, dozens. People, the thing about it is the Leaf Nation is they're very proud and they're very forthcoming in expressing the love they have for this hockey club and what it means to them. And again, as I said, I want to stress the point, it's not about the wins and losses. It's about what it means, this hockey club means to them as a family. There's a guy I met opening night. This guy was 41 years old and never been able to afford to go to a Maple Leaf game ever before. He grew up watching games with his father and sometimes his grandma, but mostly his father. And what would happen is they'd watch every game together. And if they missed the game, they'd phone each other the next morning. The opening line would be, "What was the score?" So here's this guy going to his first game with his best friend ever, opening night, 2018. And he said his father's dying words to him were, "What was the score?" So here's this big guy, beer in his hand, tears streaming down his face, and he's telling me this story. And so I looked at Deb on the way home that night, and Tavares scored a goal that night, and Matthews had 2 and scored the winner in overtime. And I said, okay, how do we top this? Like 81 games to go at the time. And I went to, I was in Calgary in Cowboys, and a guy came up and introduced himself to me. This guy was 61 years old. Well, he'll be 63 now. At the time, he was 61, and for 55 years, he cheered for Leafs. Never, ever seen him play live. Never seen him play live. Couldn't afford it. Time he didn't work out, all those type of things, but watched him on TV religiously. That day, his brother flew in from Toronto with surprise tickets for him, his wife, and this guy, his brother and his wife. So here's this guy, husky-looking guy, rugged-looking guy, telling me this story, tears streaming down his face to see his team play for the first time. I look over and there's his wife crying, his sister-in-law crying, and his brother sitting like this, nodding and just emotional. You go from that to Pittsburgh. I go in and a buddy of mine has hockey team, and I get invited into suites all the time to come and see kids and talk to hockey teams and stuff like that. So he invited me in to see his team. They were down for hockey. Pittsburgh always does that. They always, when the Leafs show up, they always make sure there's like 4 or 5 buses of teams at the front of every. It's smart marking on their part to have tournaments weekends that the teams are in. They all want to go see the Pens. But this was a big night with Toronto. So I went in to see I went into a couple suites. So I go in to see my buddy. And I see some guy standing there with the cast on. He goes, "So this guy wants to meet you because we were telling about you." Brings over, and this guy's name is Dan Mead. He was a Pittsburgh policeman. He was the guy, I don't know if people remember, back in 2018, early in the season, the synagogue shooting and massacre in Pittsburgh where all the people were killed. This idiot went in and shot everybody. This was the officer, first responder that apprehended the guy and got shot in the line of duty. He had this big, huge cast. There's a picture in the book of him. Big cast, and he was in the box beside the kids, and the kids had brought a sign from Toronto saying "Toronto strong, Pittsburgh strong," and he had dropped the opening puck, and so they were showing the sign, and he gave him the thumbs up, and then he came over into the box. So, and I met him and got a picture taken with him. You know, a buddy of mine, Jim Thompson, who owns the Aurora Tigers, he brought the Humboldt Broncos, the remaining survivors from the horrific crash, into Toronto last year to see a game, and the Leafs got them a suite. So he said, "Come in and say hi to the kids." So Chris Joseph, who played National Hockey League for 15 years, lost his son in the crash. I'm sure you're very well aware. And anyway, I went in, and that was so surreal, Sean. I went in. I'm trying to keep a straight face. I'm looking at the pain in every person's face. There's a kid in a wheelchair. One kid can't really speak. It's just, it's heartbreaking to watch this. And they're trying to be upbeat. They're all upbeat. They had smiles on their faces. I tried to joke with them a little bit, told them a few little stories. And I'm telling you, and you just look at the pain. And when I left that room, and I was going back to where I was sitting, I had to stop and get my composure because, you know, you start thinking, I'm going back to, that's a horrific thing I just witnessed, but my life goes on. They got to carry that pain for the rest of their lives, all of them. Every time they look at each other, they think of this, and they see a hockey game or something, that's got to register with them. I mean, Chris Joseph is just an absolute champion, showing me around the box and introducing me to the kids and the families and stuff like that. So that was really emotional. And so that was probably the one. And I had, you know, just people relaying their stories. You know, one guy, family in Edmonton, Madoff, their family, the father wanted the Maple Leaf crest on his tombstone. And his favorite player is Ty Domi, said number 28 on it too, on his tombstone. You know, I heard that a few times. And, you know, people's weddings were canceled because the Leafs were in the playoffs, so they would postpone it for another day. I met a guy in Minnesota that his buddies gave him for his birthday, or when he was getting married, Leaf sweater, his age on the back, the date of his wedding on each arm. He buys his sweater, the identical sweater. He buys his wife the identical sweater for her. They have not missed a Leaf game in Minnesota for 25 years. That night, they had their grandson who was attending his first game, and he had a Marner sweater on, who was his favorite player, coming to his first game. Drove from Thunder Bay. So they drive from Thunder Bay, which is 7.5 hours. So the same night I meet these guys, a bunch of yahoos standing over at the corner they look like they've had a bunch of beers. They got Leaf stuff on. So I go over see the boys. And I always go over and talk to these guys. So they didn't really know who I was. Not that I suspect everybody know who I am, but down east, they know, this idiot following the Leafs around. They all know who's this Leaf guy. And I had a crest on with Ultimate Leaf fan and wore a hat so people could identify me when they were looking for me. And so I go up to these guys and they're kind of looking at me a little inquisitive. And then they go, "Oh, I heard about you. Yeah, you're the guy. And they're all from Thunder Bay. And so I said to the one guy, "Who's the leader?" And they point this one guy. And these guys are all in their 50s. And him, I said, "Well, I want to ask a couple of questions." "Well, let me ask you, you're going to be taking pictures and write my name down?" I go, "Well, of course, I'm going to make you a star. You're going to be a star." And he goes, No, not me. And he walks away. So that was all that about. And so I talked to the other guys. And so at the end of it, I said, "I got to talk to your buddy here. What did I do to him?" And I said, and he looked at me and I go, "What did you do? Violate your parole or something? Come across the border? What are you worried? I'm not a cop." And he went, "Well, not really. But, if my wife finds out I'm here, I might as well be in jail. She's going to kill me." So then I go, "What are you talking about? What happened?" He goes, "Well, I thought you were reporting, going to put my name and picture in the paper." And he said, "This morning, I didn't want to tell her because she would say no. I snuck out of the house with my sweater under his coat, and I jumped in his buddy's car and they drove to 7 hours to Minnesota to the game." I said, "Well, where are you going to tell her you've been for the last 15 hours when you go home or whatever it is, 20 hours?" He goes, "Oh, I'll worry about that when I get there." The 50-year-old man. So then I started howling and he comes over and hugs me then and he goes, "So I go, Leafs." So, these are the type of, that's the passion, and then, by the way, and I met some guy that night and I met all kinds of drunks and crazy guys and met some guys that night. They said, "And by the way, Mike, let me tell you something. Thunder Bay, there's just not 50 people here. There's a couple of hundred. We come in droves. We look forward to this." The guys, he was 6 or 7 deep in drinks, but he said, "We make this a circle on the calendar for us. Every game we're here," and they're proud of it. And we go to Winnipeg too. And that's 7 hours, 6.5 hours to Thunder, but not 7 hours, and 7 to Winnipeg, and they make the trip. Don't so you hear that all the time, and every little city there's these little things going on. LA, one guy, his firm, they get a box. He makes sure he gets the box for Leaf game every year, and he gets it as soon as Toronto comes, books it. And he gets it and brings his buddies and it makes it a big night. Then they really all their stories, where they were when they watched them win a playoff series, they watched a special game, or it's just, tailgate. One guy moved to Carolina. He before he went to Carolina, he went to a playoff game and the Leafs played them way back. Another disappointing time. And when he came into the parking lot, the guard said to him, "You go to the right up there and go right. You'll be happier over there." He went around the corner. It was just kind of like a sea of blue and white people all tailgating on an afternoon game in Carolina. He said it was the most awesome sight he'd ever seen. He lives there full time now, not because of that, but he ended up going and he lives down there and he goes to the games and they're tailgating all the time. And I went around different tailgate spots and saw these people. So it's just stories like that these people were sharing these thoughts and these feelings and these special moments. And it was just phenomenal. And I got that every city. Yeah, you're going to get drunks and idiots, but it's so what? And that's just all part of it. That's part of the fun part of it. You can have fun with those guys too.
Those are cool stories. It brings a smile to a guy's face hearing those stories. It doesn't matter what fan or what sport you support, just hearing that, it's something that translates to all the different teams. It truthfully does.
No, and it doesn't matter who you cheer for. This is not about the Maple Leafs. And I said, I don't want this to come across as a gushy Maple Leaf story. What I want this is a sports story. This is somebody that, I don't care if you follow basketball, baseball, football, you can relate to this. It's the same way. And in your own special way, you would find the same type of fans, maybe not the same motive or maybe the same understanding of what they're cheering for or why they're cheering for the team, but the same passion.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be different. It's no different than generation of families going to certain schools and the father proud because the son went to Michigan and so did his grandfather and so did he and so did, so on and down the line. And they have this string of family members there and they go to every game together and they wear their Michigan blue and all that stuff. And I don't know why I picked Michigan because I can't stand them because they're arch rival Notre Dame. But that's the whole premise, or Yankee games or pick anybody. And the Yankee people, myself, I know the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I don't know why I don't cheer, because they were the only game that used to be on TV when I was a kid, because that was the game that came in. And my dad used to watch them. And that's Notre Dame, probably how we started. I mean, we're a good Irish Catholic family, I guess you could say. But the Notre Dame games were on Saturday afternoons. Got to watch them. So the love affair begins. The Yankee games were on the only game on at one time, and Cleveland Brown NFL games were on. So those were what we got in the Toronto area at one time. So you can see how people all kind of go to those teams. And that's how it starts. If I'd grown up somewhere else, I'd have been a different fan, possibly. More than likely. So it's more about the sports part of the story. And that's what I want. Hope everybody gets through this, and they can relate to themselves, and they can put themselves in my shoes, only cheering for a different team. And I get it. I would totally get where they're coming from on it. Jay Baruchel wrote a story, by the way. Do you know who Jay is? Remember he wrote Goon, and he's Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
See, he wrote the book about the Habs, growing up a Habs fan. And his book's a little sad, a bit of a sad story, because his father had some issues with his father and kind of a rough upbringing. But the one thing his father loved was the Montreal Canadiens. So that became his team, and it's become his team. And it's a very funny book. It's worth reading. And Jay and I had a conversation. And Jay, he doesn't go anywhere without watching Montreal Canadiens. But he said to me, the thing is, if he'd grown up in Toronto, he would have been a Leaf fan. He lives in Toronto now, but he's not a Leaf fan. But he grew up in Montreal. And it was the Canadians. So we both had that same type of passion for the teams, only we came about it different ways. But it was the same end result, if you know where I'm going with that. And and he's got that feeling today. His buddies all come out. They order the food. They got the joints ready and the beer ready to party and watch. It's the same stories. But and they do all this. And a couple of guys don't even like hockey. They're just there for the party.
They're there for the socializing.
That's the thing. But he's there, and he follows the team religiously, and they break his heart, but he loves them. So that's a book worth reading, by the way. So,
if you could sit down with one guy like I'm doing to pick who would you want to sit across from that you haven't yet?
As a player, oh boy, that's a good question. Could be living or dead?
Sure.
Conn Smythe. Because I think Conn Smythe, it was an absolute genius, and he doesn't get the recognition he should for what he was a guy way back that saved the Maple Leafs, kept them in Toronto. A lot of people will be booing that probably. But he saved the team, kept them in Toronto, and just his initiative and the way he thought is the ingenuity he came up with and foresight to have farm teams, is stockpiling players, and just his whole approach to the way the game should be played and selecting talent. And just love to pick his brain. Plus he was a war hero, fought 2 wars. And he I just love to have picked his brain and just see what made him tick. Because, one thing I enjoy doing is reading biographies of athletes mostly, because what you're looking for is what it is that makes them so much more special than us. Why is that guy on a Friday night, high school dancing, all his buddies out chasing girls and drinking? He's at the schoolyard throwing a Indian rubber ball against the wall, fielding 1,000 throws because he's a second baseman or he's a shortstop, instead of out partying with his buddy. Like, what gives him that drive to continue to do that? I mean, he could do it Saturday morning, but he's going to do it Saturday morning and Friday night, stuff like that. And why do they, what motivates these guys to think that way and think as they do?
Have you seen a common thread when you read those books?
In me?
No, in the you said you were looking for what drives them. Have you found?
Because it's that's a good question, because the common theme I see from these guys is the fact that they're willing to do, once they're on that, it's almost like tunnel vision, because they see one thing and the finish line only is at the end to playing in the National Hockey League or Major League Baseball or the NFL. Like, their goal is when they get there. Then once they get there, how do I stay here? So they're always trying to keep themselves like one step ahead of the process. Because, the first day, it's like a coach. First day you get hired as a coach, the one day you're closer to getting fired. And the same as a player. One day you sign your contracts, the first day you're one day closer to getting cut. So they're always trying to stay that one level ahead. And what is it they do? how they train harder, how they eat harder, like, all these type of things. And they all kind of have that common thread. Yes, they do things a little differently.
You mentioned in your collection, your former collection, you had the original Maple Leafs door.
Yep.
What piece in that original collection was maybe your most obscure thing? Like, this is a puck that was whatever, or this was the original contract, or this was, I don't know. What was the most obscure thing you ever picked up?
Well, see, I see it's shots at that. I mean, I always look for the oddball type things like that, like the door. I knew when I got it, I knew this was going to be special. I didn't know it was going to be as special was. I have the 1962 banner that hung in Maple Leaf Gardens, and they thought the banners had all been destroyed. And I got contacted by a guy one time who said, you call yourself the ultimate Leaf fan. I've got this and that. And I got that all the time. I said, no, I don't call myself that. I got called that by somebody else, and I just used the name. And then when he found out, he read about me and knew about me. Anyway, long and short of it is his father was the upholsterer at the Gardens for 42 years. And he came to work one day, and Harold Ballard had taken all the banners, the Stanley Cup champion banners, out of the roof of the Gardens because he didn't want to look at all the winning teams, and his teams weren't winning. So they were stuck in a shop in the Gardens. And he came in one day to check on the workers, see what the guys were doing. They're painting and doing all that summer maintenance. And he went over, and there's all the banners being used as paint tarps covering seats, and they're all ripped and torn and paint covered, and they're ruined. And these are all these relics. He went back to his shop, and the 1962 banner was still there. So he put it away. He met Harold, and he said, Harold, all the banners got thrown out. One was saved here. Do you mind if I take it home, give it to my son? I don't care. Get out. I don't want that crap. Get it out of here. So he took it home, gave it to his son. His son saved it all these years, then decided he wanted to do something with it. Thought about talking to the Leafs, the Hockey Hall of Fame. He didn't want to put it in an auction. He contacted me. I have it. So to take the story one step further, we had it at our place, and you got all the players coming over, and like Johnny Bauer, before he passed, he came and visited the room. Having him hold that Stanley Cup, that was his first win, 62. Standing there, the tears bring a lot of tears out of people sometimes, and the tears coming down his face with his wife standing beside him, and the two of them are standing there holding it. It meant so much to him, and here he is holding this banner. You'd never probably seen it since it was hanging up there after they first won. And what it meant to him, and all the other players I showed it to came in with George Armstrong and all these guys coming, like their eyes were fixated on it, and you could see that proud moment. So the point of the story I'd like to tell everybody is that, Bill Barocca in 1951 scored the winning goal for the Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup, then died tragically in a plane crash. The Leafs didn't win again until 1962, and his body was discovered a couple months later. So of all the banners that got destroyed, why did the 62 banner be the only one that was survived? The Bill Barocca ghost lives on. That's what I tell everybody.
That is a great story. A great story.
So I've got pucks. I had pucks, trophies, contracts. I know I'm taking a lazy way out and a chicken way out, but
no, you just gave me that. You kidding me? The banner story was fantastic. You don't need to say any more than that.
Good.
The only thing I'm saddened about is that I don't get to actually come to Toronto, walk in your basement, and see this.
Well, actually, I still have the banner because the banner's sitting in my room in here. I have an office. I still have about 25% of the collection. We've moved into a condo. I've done a good portion of the condo, my wing of the office.
You must be married to a great woman, because I can't imagine having any fan having.
It's an office. So I turned the closet into a showcase, and there was a whole closet.
Can you twist the camera so we can see?
Can you? Actually, you can. There's the banner there.
Holy man. If you're listening to this, get on YouTube and see. Wowzer.
And there it is there. Well, here, I can show you. I can do it. So here's a cool piece right here. There's the original blueprint for the Gardens for the seats. And stamped
the original blueprint?
Blueprint, yep. From 1931. And it's stamped on the back, July 31.
How the hell did you come across that?
Somebody, and I've got another stuff. They're under the carpet over here. Somebody family was probably related to one of the construction workers and probably got stuffed away somewhere, and it just showed up. There's a couple original seats from the Gardens. Those are the ones from 1931, not the last ones. Those original seats.
Yeah.
There's that. And over here, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, there's the showcase over there. I don't know if you can see that. That was in the hall. And then, I didn't. Oh, here. Let me go do this for a second here. You guys just look at that. Let me do this so you can see this. So there's the there's the band. You can see better now. I've lit the case up. And
Wow.
There, I get over there. You can see that coming in. Here behind you is that. You see that? Be looking. That's the blind. That blind goes up and down.
Okay. Well, I got two more for you.
Yep, sure.
Who is the best player you've ever seen play live?
Dave Keon.
Dave Keon?
Yeah, Dave Keon. I was a little kid when I saw him play, but I remembered him. He stood out. Small guy. I'm not a big guy. I'm only 5'8". He was a small guy, and just the way he played. But it's more not that he was small, because I didn't even know what sizes meant in those days. Watching. It's just that he just was such a good skater, and he just seemed to always have the puck.
Okay, your final one for Leafs fans. Who is the best Leaf line of all time?
Geez, that's a really good question. Boy, oh boy. There's been some good ones. Keon. Oh boy, that'd be really tough. Probably the kid line, I would say. Would be Conacher, Primo, and Jackson. I'd probably have to pick them because they played together so long, and that's back in the 30s.
And
So
just
I picked-
dominated.
And then a good line in the modern era would be, Sittler McDonald and Errol Thompson when he played with them. That was a good line that played well together. But I'd say the kid line is probably the one.
Well, I've really appreciated you hopping on with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You got some stories that are just like
Oh yeah, it's almost
unbelievable, right? Like unbelievable. Any
Totally.
fan would love to have heard half of those firsthand. So really appreciate you hopping on, Mike, today, and look forward to getting your books and reading them. I'm sure they'll be fantastic. A little look inside sports and the Leafs.
That's great.
Hey folks, thanks again for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show and like what you hear, please click subscribe. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, a new guest will be sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you find your podcast fix. Until next time.